Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing some Umi Kairyu-shin test hands. So I'm really excited for you guys because this deck is an awesome deck that summons out an incredible boss monster, Ocean Dragon Lord Kairyu-shin, which is just such a cool card to put on the field. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like in your name description every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So this deck is really fun to be able to play because you can actually play some really awesome old school cards like a Legendary Ocean, which is actually one of the key cards of the deck, because you want to drop your Ocean Dragon Lord's level down by 1 so you can actually normal summon it to the field, which is really cool. This deck is super fun to be able to play because being able to summon out Kairyu-shin to your side of the field is just such a powerful play because it has a really awesome effect that basically each player can only control one non-water monster while Umi is on the field, which a Legendary Ocean counts as, which is really cool. But you guys know it's dad rule number 1 that we gotta pile shuffle up the deck, because you don't pile shuffle up the deck, then you run the risk of bricking. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck and see what we can do for our first test hand, because this deck is super fun to be able to play and it's just absolutely amazing. So let's go ahead and see what we can draw. So we're going to draw into a copy of Rage of Kairyu-shin, a copy of Ocean Dragon Lord Kairyu-shin, Warrior of Atlantis, a copy of Salmon, and another copy of Kairyu-shin. So this is actually a pretty good hand because you can establish a really simple field with what you have. So what we're going to go ahead and do is activate the copy of Warrior of Atlantis to be able to grab from our deck to our hand a Legendary Ocean, which is very important to be able to get to, which is why we play so many ways to get to a Legendary Ocean, which if you guys would like to check out the deck profile, as always with every test hand video, it is down in the description down below. But we're going to go ahead and activate a Legendary Ocean, which will actually be treated as Umi while it's on the field, and reduce the level of all water monsters in both players' hands and on the field by 1. And all water monsters gain 200 attack points, which is a really good effect to be able to just put this card on the field. We can then normal summon out our copy of Kairyu-shin, which is very important to put on the field because this card has a really crazy effect. While Umi is on the field, each player can only control one face-up non-water monster, and if a player controls 2 or more, they must send some to the graveyard so they only control 1, basically working like a Rivalry of Warlords. But this card also has a really awesome search effect that during the main phase, then you can add from your deck to your hand 1 Umi, Kairyu-shin spell or trap, or a Sea Stealth spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is really good to be able to add any of those cards that you need directly from your deck to your hand, because you can grab some really powerful cards like Kairyu-shin's Dark Reef, which is going to help us swarm the field, which is just such a good card. This card is so crazy in this deck. So what we're going to do is go ahead and set to our side of the field Kairyu-shin's Dark Reef, and also set on our side of the field Rage of Kairyu-shin, which is going to help us pop monsters on the field to help us go in for game, because our opponent's only going to control 1 monster, so we can go ahead and just activate this and pop a monster that they summon. So we're going to go ahead and let the opponent go ahead, and once they go into their turn, they're only going to be able to summon 1 monster, but when they do, we're going to go ahead and flip up the copy of Kairyu-shin's Dark Reef, which is a really powerful card that has the ability that you send an Umi you control to the graveyard to special summon up to 2 monsters with different names from your hand or deck that mention Umi or are water normal monsters, which is really good. So what we're going to do is go ahead and special summon out 2 water monsters from our deck, which is going to be a copy of Mega Fortress Whale and actually a really cool old school card, which is going to be Maiden of the Aqua. And the reason we're summoning Maiden of the Aqua is because she counts as a copy of Umi while she's on the field. So we never lose that lock off of our copy of our Kairyu-shin, which is really cool. So at this point, now that we've got these out on the field, this card has a bonus effect that if your opponent controls a monster, which is why we waited, you can also special summon out level 6 or lower water normal monsters from your hand or deck, which is really good to your side of the field, which is just such a good effect in defense position. And then your opponent controls a monster. Basically, this card just swarms the field, which is just so good. This card is just one of the best cards in the entire deck because just by sending Umi to the graveyard or Legendary Ocean, you can just get that really powerful effect to summon those cards to your side of the field, but you summon them in defense position, which is not that big of a deal to just put them on your side of the field in defense, because then you can swarm the field and turn them to attack during the following turn to go in for game, which is just really, really awesome. So we're going to go ahead and special summon out our other copy of Salmon to our side of the field, which is basically just going to fill up the entire field. And when our opponent goes in for battle phase, we can go ahead and flip up the copy of our Rage of Kairyu-shin, which will let us pop 1, 2, 3, 4 monsters on the field, which are only going to have one anyways because we have Umi on the field with Maiden of the Aqua and our copy of Kairyu-shin, which is really cool to be able to just lock the opponent down. So at this point, our opponent's going to pass back over to us. We're going to go ahead and draw. You do have Fish Sonar that you can use, but you really don't need to. You can kind of just switch these monsters into attack position and go in for game because you have plenty of damage on board with these monsters because of your Mega Fortress Whale. Mega Fortress Whale has the ability that if Umi is on the field, you can activate this effect that your water monsters can attack directly this turn, which is just a really crazy effect that basically you can attack with a 2550, 2400, 2000, and a 2400, and also use Kairyu-shin's effect to be able to search another Kairyu-shin spell or another copy of a Umi card, which we can grab Sea Stealth, which also counts as a copy of Umi, which is really, really good. It also has the ability that water monsters you control cannot be targeted with non-water monsters effects, which is just really, really good. So basically you can just throw this on the field, make it so that your monsters have that added layer of protection, and then just start swinging with all these cards. Or you can even activate Fish Sonar to be able to use its effect to be able to add a level 7 or lower monster from your deck to your hand that mentions Umi, which can be your copy of Warrior of Atlantis that you can then discard and then activate a Legendary Ocean, giving you that card on the field to be able to boost all of your water monsters up by an additional 200 to help you go in for extra damage, which is really cool, even though this was already game, which is really cool because this card can attack directly. So let's go ahead and go into another test hand, because as you guys can see, this deck is really fun to play. It's really simple what it's trying to do, because basically you're just trying to get this on the field with your copy of Kairyu-shin, because once you get these two on the field, you pretty much have a lock against the opponent, and then the other cards just kind of add to it, which is really cool. Especially your copy of your Dark Reef, which is how you actually win the game, because you're going to send this to the graveyard and then swarm the field with 4 other water monsters, which is really, really good. So let's go ahead and do another test hand and see what we can do for the next one, because this deck is really fun to play. It's really insane how easy it is to combo off in this deck and just get those really easy OTKs. So let's go ahead and go into the next test hand and see what we can do. So we're going to draw into a copy of our Doom Kraken, a copy of Rage of Kairyu-shin, Foolish Burial Goods, which is actually a way to search out Kairyu-shin, a copy of Torrential Tribute, and finally a copy of Ice Barrier. So this is actually a neat hand for this deck, because you're going to go ahead and activate your copy of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is going to go ahead and send from our deck to the graveyard a copy of Ice Barrier, which is also going to activate and let us banish it from the graveyard to be able to send a level 5 or higher water monster from our deck to the graveyard, and then you can add a water monster from your graveyard to your hand. Basically a long way of searching a level 5 or higher water monster and adding it to our hand, which is a really good effect to be able to just grab your Kairyu-shin by sending it to the graveyard so you can grab it later, which is really, really nice to be able to just grab that card. So what we're going to do is go ahead and grab our copy of Kairyu-shin, put it into our hand, and then we can just set a copy of Ice Barrier and a copy of our Torrential Tribute, which is going to protect us a little bit for this turn. We can also set the copy of our Kraken if you want to go ahead and set that card just to add an extra layer of protection, just in case they activate a Feather Duster or something like that before they summon. Or if you don't think you're going to get OTK'd, you can leave yourself wide open, but you do have the copy of Torrential Tribute to protect yourself. Sometimes this deck does run into situations like this where you can't summon out your copy of your Ocean Dragon Lord because you don't have a way to get to a Legendary Ocean, but we do play a bunch of different ways to get to it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and let the opponent go, and we're going to go ahead and draw for turn, which is going to go ahead and draw us into a copy of Fish Sonar, which is totally fine to be able to draw into, because you can activate Fish Sonar And once you do, you can actually grab from your deck to your hand, just like we did before, Warrior of Atlantis, and then you can go ahead and grab from your deck to your hand your copy of a Legendary Ocean, which are all near the top, right there. They're just right there. But we can go ahead and add a Legendary Ocean from our deck to our hand. And what's really cool about this is if we did activate the copy of Torrential Tribute, you can board wipe the opponent of all of their monsters, and you have the copy of Ice Barrier that has the ability that when an attack is declared involving your opponent's monster, you can change that opponent's monster's attack to 0, negate its effects, and it can't change its battle position, while also getting this card in the graveyard to be able to banish on the following turn, which is really, really good. This card is also really good because just in case you need to board wipe the opponent, you have it, but if you didn't need to use the copy of your Torrential Tribute, you can just normal summon out Kairyu-shin, which will make them send cards to the graveyard, which is really cool. So we're going to go ahead and activate a Legendary Ocean, normal summon out Kairyu-shin because it's a level 4 now, activate Kairyu-shin's effect to be able to search the deck for another Kairyu-shin spell, Sea Stealth, or a card that is an Umi card. So we're going to go ahead and search the deck for, say, probably a copy of Dark Reef. Usually I like to add Dark Reef from deck to hand because it's going to help me set up for so many different plays, especially with Rage already in my hand, because now my opponent's only going to be able to control one monster. So at this point, you can go ahead and activate your copy of Rage to be able to pop that one monster and go in for 2200. We can then go ahead and set our copy of our Dark Reef to our side of the field and basically perform the same combo that we did before, where once our opponent goes for their turn, we can go ahead and once they summon a monster, of course, you can go ahead and activate your copy of Dark Reef, sending from your field to the graveyard your copy of your Legendary Ocean, and then summon to your side of the field what we did before, the copy of the Maiden of the Aqua, and your copy of Mega Fortress Whale, and then your copy of your Salmons to your side of the field, which gets you some really big damage to help you go in for game on the following turn, which is just really, really cool to be able to use those cards. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck, and once we do, we're going to go ahead and let the opponent go, but you also have the copy of your Kraken that you can activate, that if Umi is on the field, which it is with your copy of Maiden of the Aqua, you can use this card's effect to be able to target a monster that your opponent controls, and then you special summon this card from your hand and bounce a water monster, target a water monster that you control, and then a monster that your opponent controls, bounce your card to the hand, and then destroy the opponent's card, and then special summon this card to the field, which is really, really good to be able to just get those cards off the field to help you go in for game during the next turn, because you can bounce something like one of your Salmons to help you go in for game. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and draw for turn, and we're going to draw into a copy of Pot of Duality, which we're not going to special summon this turn depending on what our field is, which we already have all of these cards that you can go in for game with, so we can just switch those into attack position, activate the copy of Pot of Duality, look at the top 3, grab the Foolish Burial Goods, put these back on the top of the deck. That's actually really crazy that we had both of those right there. But we're going to go ahead and put those on top of the deck, shuffle up the deck, and then we're going to just go in for game, activating the effect of our Fortress Whale. You can also use the effect of Kairyu-shin, just like we did before, to be able to grab from our deck to our hand a copy of Sea Stealth 2 to be able to give that added protection, which is just a really good effect to be able to use in this deck. You also have that copy of Ice Barrier that you can banish if you want to grab another copy of Kairyu-shin, which is an option for you guys. But let's go ahead into the next test stand and see what we can do for the next one, because as you guys see, this deck doesn't really go into the extra deck, which is why this card is so good in this build, because being able to use Extravagance just to draw 2 is just really, really nice. If you guys would like to check out that extra deck, definitely check out the deck profile down in the description down below. But let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck and see what we can do for the next test hand, because this deck is really fun to be able to play and just a really cool deck overall, especially with it being Mako Tsunami's deck. Like, this is just so cool, especially with Kairyu-shin in it. This deck is just really fun to play. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one. So we're going to draw into a copy of Torrential Tribute, which is a really good defensive card, a copy of Pot of Extravagance, another copy of Torrential Tribute, a copy of Ocean Dragon Lord Kairyu-shin, and a Foolish Burial Goods. Now, the only downside of this hand is we don't have a Legendary Ocean, but we have ways to get to it with our copy of Pot of Extravagance, which is going to help us dig into the deck. So we're going to go ahead and activate that card, shuffle up our extra deck, which again doesn't really matter what we banish off of this, but let's go ahead and shuffle it up anyways and see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of our 6 off of our extra deck. And then once we do, let's take a quick peek and see what we hit. So we're actually going to hit a number 4, Zeus, Stealth Spawn, Bahamut Shark, and another copy of number 4. This is not bad at all because we still have ways to get to our copies of Toad. We still have a number 4, a Zeus, and 2 copies of our Stealth Spawn. This is probably the best that you can hope for when you banish from the extra deck for your copy of your Extravagance. So at this point, we're going to get to draw 2 additional cards, which hopefully one of them is a Legendary Ocean, because if it is, we have plays. So at this point, we're going to draw into a copy of Kairyu-shin and a copy of Fury of Kairyu-shin, which is actually turned off because we already have both of our Torrentials in our hand. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and activate Foolish Burial Goods to be able to send from our deck to the graveyard a copy of Ice Barrier, which then we can use the effect of Ice Barrier to banish this card to kind of thin the deck out so we can get to a Legendary Ocean a little easier, which is going to let us send from our deck to the graveyard a copy of Kairyu-shin and then add that card to our hand. So at this point, you still do have some plays because you can just set double Torrential Tribute in your back row, which is going to be really defensive against the opponent because you have double copies of Torrential Tribute. So you're going to let the opponent go. You have the copy of Torrential you can flip. You have the second copy that you can flip and just board wipe them twice, which is really, really good. You're probably not going to get OTK'd, but at this point, we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Kairyu-shin's Dark Reef, and that ends as a little bit of a brick, which can happen with decks like this, but that's totally fine. So let's go ahead and do one more test hand. That is something that does happen with this deck every so often, even though you play so many different ways in this deck to be able to grab a Legendary Ocean. It will happen sometimes, especially since I'm not pile shuffling in between test hands. That's why it's so important to pile shuffle, guys, because sometimes you'll run into that. If you don't pile shuffle, you'll run into hands like that where you'll brick. You'll get multiple copies of the same card. You'll get copies of cards that you don't want, and it just happens sometimes when you play decks like this. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck again and see what we can do for our next test hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Rage of Kairyu-shin, Kairyu-shin's Dark Reef, a Legendary Ocean. This is already perfect. Another copy of a Legendary Ocean and a Fish Sonar. This is about the best hand. We go from a really brick hand to a really, really good hand. So that's just something about decks like this. It's really amazing what you can do with them because sometimes you'll just get this absolutely broken hand like this. So what we're going to do is go ahead and activate a Legendary Ocean. Very simple play. Activate Fish Sonar. Fish Sonar is going to let us grab a copy of Kairyu-shin, and since we have Umi on the field, you can activate the effect to special summon out a copy of a water normal monster to your side of the field, like a copy of your Salmon, which is pretty good just to go ahead and get that card on the field. So at this point, we can go ahead and normal summon out our copy of Kairyu-shin because it is a level 4 under a Legendary Ocean, and then we can go ahead and use its effect to be able to grab another copy of a card that it mentions Umi. So I'm going to go ahead and grab from my deck to my hand a copy of Sea Stealth, or you can actually grab a copy of, say, a Fury, which is going to help us out a lot to be able to grab a Torrential Tribute to give us that added layer of protection just in case we need it, because this card can actually protect our water monsters from being destroyed by card effects. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck and see what we can do. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and leave these two on the field, set to our side of the field the copy of Torrential, and set to our side of the field the copy of Fury, and the copy, or not Fury, but Dark Reef, and a copy of Rage to our side of the field and pass over to the opponent. Once we pass over to the opponent, depending on what they summon, you do have the copy of Rage that can pop the monster. You also have a copy of the Torrential, and you have the Dark Reef, which usually you're just going to activate the copy of Dark Reef upon a normal summon because it's going to give you so many pluses. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and send our copy of a Legendary Ocean to the grave, special summon out to our side of the field a copy of Maiden of the Aqua, and a copy of Mega Fortress Whale. And then also, since our opponent controls a monster, we're going to summon out to our side of the field a copy of the Salmon, which is really good to be able to just summon our copy of Terra King Salmon to our side of the field just to get that additional monster on the field. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and let our opponent do their thing. We also have the copy of Torrential and Rage, which will be able to pop 4 monsters, because this card has the ability, if Umi is face on the field, target monster your opponent controls up to the number of water monsters you control whose original level is 5 or higher, and destroy them. And it also locks down the zones. So you're going to lock down 1, 2, 3, 4 zones, but they're only going to have 1. So you're going to lock down that 1 zone, which is really, really cool. And if they keep summoning, you have the copy of Torrential, which you can banish from the graveyard a copy of your Fury to make sure that it's going to go off, which is really, really nice about these two cards. You're going to pop 1, 2, 3, 4 monsters and also the Torrential, which is really good. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and draw into the next turn, which is another copy of Kairyu-shin. Activate a Legendary Ocean, start switching these to attack position, and then once you do, you can go ahead and use Kairyu-shin's effect. I like to grab that added layer of protection with our copy of Sea Stealth from deck to hand, which just gives us a little bit more protection to help us go in for game, which is really, really nice. And at this point, you can use your copy of Mega Fortress Whale, which is why I play this card in the deck, because if Umi's on the field, you can activate this effect that your water monsters can attack directly this turn to help you just push for game. So I think that pretty much well explains how the deck plays. It's super fun to play. Sometimes you will have moments where you won't draw into your copy of a Legendary Ocean, which is totally fine because you still have some backup plays with your copies of Torrential Tribute, Ice Barriers, and stuff like that in this deck. If you guys would like to check out the deck profile, definitely check it out in the description down below, because this deck is super fun to be able to play. It's actually kind of budget to play too, because Kairyu-shin at the time of recording is only about $1, which is kind of crazy, and which is just such an amazing thing about this deck. I think the most like crazy thing in the entire deck is Fish Sonar, and it fluctuates all over the place. Sometimes it's an 8, sometimes it's 12. It just depends. It might be more now, I don't know, but it's still a really good budget deck to be able to pick up. So I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. It's super fun to be able to play, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.